Maybe Sanjay, if I can actually have an introductory remarks. This is the board for RICS South Asia, and Sanjay is the chairman of the board. Sanjay, if I can have the introductory remarks by you in terms of what this COVID challenge is bringing us, and if there are opportunities for us to look forward to.
Sanjay is not there, Nimish.
He came
Nimish,
in.
thank you very much. I hope I'm audible now.
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you everyone on the panel and everybody who's registered. Delighted to be a part. Past 2 months, we have witnessed something that we never did before. But when I look back last 10 years, I've been seeing disruption only. So I remember in 2008, we concluded that we are not to be impacted by global financial crisis, but eventually we did. And then we felt real estate cycle perhaps is going through a turn and correction, and it will recover, but it never did. And whilst most of the sector, especially on the commercial side, things were getting stable. So from the peak of 42 million in 2008, it came down to 25 million square feet of net absorption in office space. It bounced to last year, 2019, Jan to December, as 47 million square feet net absorption, highest ever in the history of India. But at the same time, the residential segment was perhaps going through a continued turbulence since 10 years, as it entered Delhi first, then moved to Mumbai, and then the rest of the country. And when you look back, a lot of these challenges that we saw in the real estate sector can be largely attributed to the fact that we did not spend enough time and energy in analyzing the business environment or the business model or the demand analysis or the micro markets analysis. A lot of it was on guts, a lot of it was on debt, a lot of it was on leverage, and the inbuilt optimism of the built environment and the world in this country. While that had worked very well in the past, it did not so. And I was part of many discussions in last 10 years when everybody said, in 2 years' time, things will change. And a lot of people said that because 3 to 5 years looked too far, 1 year looked too early, and therefore subconsciously 2 years looked just the right statement to make. As part of many discussions on the media as well, I saw a lot of us saying 2 years will recover. Those 2 years for last 10 years have not returned. And we have seen a deteriorating situation. While we've seen environment issues in Delhi, flood issues in Bombay, tsunami impact in Chennai, traffic chaos in Bangalore, infrastructure needed did not pick up, and the pace of development continued to exceed the infrastructure, and therefore we're always in damage control mode. After many years, when the government took conscious decision to improve infrastructure, there was a hope that things will improve, and they are improving. Airports to begin with, highways, increasingly metro projects across the country at various stages seems positive, but many other things perhaps not catching up. The digitization, ease of doing business somewhat improved, and we were talking about ease of doing business last 1 year because it has improved. But my biggest focus and concern has been that the cost of doing business in this country has become high, and therefore it has put almost most businesses under stress. Telecom sector, airline business, the most favorite airline went bust. The telecom companies are going through their own cycles. Banking sector has gone through its own issues and challenges. Automobile sector is going through challenges. Real estate is impacted for last 10 years. So the disruption has been there. To be impacted by something like COVID-19 at this stage has made many wonder whether businesses would be profitable and viable if this stress on the economy as a result of this continues any further. And therefore, while we will make attempts to open partly and slowly and gradually, the reality of COVID-19 cases going high is staring at us. I wouldn't be surprised, without unnecessarily alarming everybody on this call, the cases may go up substantially, but we'll have to kind of come around and work. I see a lot of infrastructure projects coming back, so that's good news. A lot of our sites which are not in red zones are being permitted to commence. A lot of workers have stayed back to work. That is good news. And therefore, one can only hope that next quarter or so, and certainly by the end of the year, we will learn to deal with it. And the reason I use the expression learn to deal with it, because I believe this COVID-19 is not going away for next 2-3 years. Just like SARS, just like Ebola, there is COVID-19. Maybe there'll be treatment available 1 or 2 years from now, but we'll become more cautious, we'll become more careful, and we'll become far more disciplined in our business. So my thoughts are, how do we ensure that in such difficult times, we keep real estate business viable, we keep real estate business profitable? Because regulatory environment has changed, dynamics have changed, cost of interest has come down, JD and JVs have started to come about, distress fund has opened up, a lot of measures have been taken. But if the slowdown in demand and inventory is not monetized, 2 lakh worth of crores projects which are stuck, 1 lakh worth of crore which is stuck in inventory, 3 lakh crore worth of cash not being unlocked and needed, is a very serious situation to be in. So I wanted to stimulate and open the discussion from that stage, and therefore wanted more questions to come about. So I would leave it at that, and I wanted to once again thank you everyone for joining in. Over to you, Nimish. Nimish, over to you.
Sridhar, this is Nitin Kapoor. I believe Nimish has had a blip, it seems. So just let me allow him to come back online. But I think let me step in the meantime. So as the agenda had been circulated, can I now invite Mr. Anshuman Magazine to give us an international perspective of this of this situation, given he has a number of geographies and a very vast geographical area under his leadership. Mr. Magazine, can I please invite you to share your view?
Nimesh, Mike Holland says that he cannot join.
Chitra, the team is working on it. Hi, Anshuman. I think you possibly Nitin's voice was quite muffled. But in terms of what we heard from Sanjay is a situation which, while we are not able to yet see the bottom of it, and the real estate in India will have a challenge, a continued challenge from where it has left. Uh, what do you see the international perspective? I mean, I heard some of my counterparts saying that there will be huge
Can you hear me?
situation on the revenue front itself. In
Can you
some
hear
of the
me?
uh, hello, yeah. So there could be a situation on the. I mean, some of them are saying that 30 to 40% impact on their revenues itself, not just profit. So what do you see as the overall international fallout of this challenge, of this crisis?
Yep.
Not able to hear. Anshuman, not able to hear.
Yeah, the voice is very feeble, Anshuman. I think you're trying to speak something. Something is coming up, but not really
Are you
very clear.
sorry? Can you hear me?
Now,
Yes.
now we can.
I think
Now,
I'm still on mute, and it's not in my control.
No, you're unmuted, Anshuman. We can hear you now.
Yep. Not in my. I'll speak in sign. No, no, no. I think I'm. Yeah, I'm speaking quite loudly. Should I? Oh, can you hear me better?
Very well now.
Oh, great. So I don't need to shout. No, sorry. Nimish, did you ask me a question, or should I just give you just a very quick, roundabout what's happening?
Yeah, a roundabout of
Great, great.
international
No, no. I will just
scenario
be very
right now.
quick. I think I've got 3 minutes slot, so I'll be, not, I don't have the expertise in COVID, but I just want to talk about Southeast Asia, Middle East, within India.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So sorry, there's a lag. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Anshul, can you hear me? You have no reaction. Or you can. Okay, okay. There is a lag. Okay, fine. Sorry. So just very quickly, just a high level thing. If I start from Southeast Asia and look at Singapore, so I think one something which not which is also indication in India that as yesterday Singapore extended their lockdown to June 1, and this obviously will have its own impact on the real estate market, on the economy. And it's also indicated because for a country like in Singapore, which is the first world infrastructure, population is controlled, and they've not been able to control the virus. You can imagine for a lot of other countries, it's an indication not to open too quickly, and if you open, then open it in batches or in parts. So I think this will be a good sort of a example for even India how to do this. And the impact of that, the economy, of course, earlier the forecast was that the GDP of Singapore will reduce by -1%, and the latest forecast is -4% GDP. So obviously the office market is declined, retail is obviously impacted big time. But what is different is, and the major impact will be really on the investment side of the market, because if you look at the Singapore real estate market, it's really run by primarily office, and second is the capital markets, the investment side of the business, which is quite substantial there. Already there's a 40% reduction in real estate investment transaction in Singapore, and with this lockdown, and this is just first quarter impact, this is going to further impact the Singapore market. So really Q2, Q3 in Singapore real estate market will suffer. But the good part, the benefit Singapore, for example, has it that the government is subsidizing wages, they are giving tax waivers, so they are really putting a big investment in, which countries like ours can't afford in India, and and that make a big difference. And also Singapore is a strong global financial center, strong governance, and of course world-class infrastructure. So they still would be more resilient than a lot of other countries. The only thing other relevant in Southeast Asia is Indonesia, which has its own problems. The infection rate is going up. The real estate market is going to get impacted big time. Again, on the investments and office side, they have another challenge. Ramadan is starting, and it was interesting. I was watching on one of the documentaries that, and this is, on Ramadan they have hundreds and thousands, and we talk about labor issues in India and labor going back home. It's a very similar situation in Indonesia, where from Jakarta and major cities during Ramadan, hundreds and thousands of labor go back home, and the government of Indonesia has actually told them that this time they have to stay put and they can't travel because of COVID. And that again, that labor would, like in India, we're facing the same issue, that whenever it opens up, what would happen to our construction industry? This is the same challenge Indonesia is also facing. Other countries are Thailand, which of course has been impacted big time thanks to tourism. They depend on tourism and on manufacturing, and because from this, and the large part of the market, the real estate market in Thailand is residential. It's a smaller office market, and residential, industrial, and the investment side is a larger part of the market. And of course, the residential market has taken a huge beating. What is interesting in Thailand is that the residential market, just like in India, our office market is led by large multinational companies. In Thailand, especially Bangkok, which is the largest part of where the real estate activity is, the residential market is led by foreign investors, largely Chinese, but also European. And those foreign investors are not investing there, so the sales have really dropped big time in the residential market in Thailand. But the locals, interestingly, because the prices have sort of become a bit more competitive, the locals are the ones who are sustaining the market right now, although at a slow speed. So overall, the countries which are holding relatively well in real estate market, especially, is Vietnam and Philippines. Although the Philippines economy is a big question mark, they're highly leveraged, and they may suffer. But because they're also an outsourcing hub, I always compare Philippines or Manila to Bangalore as a real estate market. And a lot of the clients we see in the office market in Bangalore are based in Philippines. Philippines being, after India, Philippines is the biggest offshore center in the region. And so far, the office market is slowing down, but still doing better in other places. I'll be very quick on the Middle East. Coming to the Middle East side, of course, oil prices going down. The travel is and industry. Dubai is, Dubai used to get 100,000 Chinese buyers visiting Dubai every year, who would purchase goods worth 1.3 billion. So that's obviously gone to zero. Plus the airlines and restaurants, taxis, everything related to that. And it's a trading hub. So Dubai is being impacted big time. And Aditya is here. He lives in Abu Dhabi. I believe offices are open in Abu Dhabi. Dubai has a partial lockdown. I believe they're going to open it up again soon. Their lockdown sometimes have been only on the weekends, and so the Middle East market, especially if I look at UAE, obviously is impacted big time. However, because they have so much labor there, I believe they're still keeping some construction activity on. But because of oil prices, and like I mentioned on the travel and other things, Middle East will be a tough market. Investments will be low, but they have less issues. Small population, huge reserves. They're rich countries, but in the short term, they will feel the pain. In most other places in the region, I would say Turkey is suffering big time. The countries like Turkey, Morocco, Egypt, all of them struggling in the real estate market big time, and we don't see anything happening there for next 3 to 6 months. So Middle East will be bleeding, although in some parts, like in Dubai, interestingly, they talk about there is some activity in the office side of the market. People want to, for our business especially, there will be some activity because people want to relocate or expand or to some extent, or to renegotiate, etc. But generally speaking, the Middle East will be hit quite badly. And lastly, I think others are going to talk about India. I just want to mention India. One end, we will feel pain for the first time in areas we did not even know existed in the short term. But I'm quite optimistic that India has a better chance of recovery. It will take longer than we expect, but because we are so far behind, because we have the talent, dollars rupee has weakened, so the cost of the talent has even become better, and oil prices going down will impact. But certainly, if you look at the Indian real estate market, I think Sanjay and others talked about the numbers. Our office leasing is down, but overall, when I look at the region, the only and if I look at our business, only two countries. If I look at Asia Pac, especially, and the Middle East, the only two countries which are still holding back to some extent real estate market is India and Japan. Japan has got large investment market, and India slowing down, but these are the only two markets which is still seeing some activity. No doubt, the residential market India is badly impacted, but we office slowing down. But Japan and India are the only two countries which is still not, the real estate market I'm talking about here, are not as impacted overall as other countries. So I can go on. I'll just stop there, and Nimish, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Anshuman. Thanks a lot for giving that international perspective. And it does look like that there is a ray of hope in some markets. And the fact that you mentioned that the recovery could be faster in India still gives us some hope. We do have some exciting questions coming up, but then to try and understand, while we understood from Sanjay what was the real estate situation over here, if I may get Sangeeta and or Michael in to try and pitch on the real estate perspective, please, the real estate developers perspective. Sangeeta, can you hear us, please? No. Mike, are you there? Can I get you online, please? Even I can't get Mike in as well. Right. So while we wait for them to join and we'll take their perspective, may I invite Mr. Vipul Rungta to try and talk about the financial landscape right now in the sector and the recent policy changes which RBI has introduced, and any other stimulus package which the industry is looking forward to. Do you think that that's something which is going to come up? So just to understand from you, Vipul, if you can give us the finance perspective of for the sector, please. Vipul looks like, just a second. Vipul, you'll have to unmute yourself, please. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. As far as I'll make it quick and short because it's best not to describe when you are in too much pain. I don't have too much to say. I think that is what I will say as far as the finance industry is concerned. I still feel that we are not as much pain. Like the finance industry works with a 1 quarter lag vis-a-vis developer pain. So I think the developers are in a significantly higher pain as of today. I think the pain for the finance industry will be down 1 or 2 months, maybe a quarter later, because of the moratorium everybody knows that has been given, which is basically 3 months of let's do more talks and let's do more webinars and just understand what everybody has to say. And it's more like a circular motion actually, most of the stuff. But I'll just try and I'll not go too much into what I think is generally known, but just some key highlights. So 50 to 60% of bulk financing, corporate financing in real estate in India was coming from NBFCs, and NBFCs, if we say pre-COVID and today, I genuinely feel that If I was a distressed NBFC or if I was a distressed developer as on 1st of February, which there were a fair bit of them, and if I take my position as on 21st of or 22nd of April, I think I'm slightly better off because on 1st of February only I was in pain, and today it's virtually the entire market. So it kind of plays up and makes my life slightly simpler. Like you mentioned, government incentives, or for that matter, moratoriums. There is going to be there has been, you can say, some kind of an effort being made to support the NBCs, whether it's on their liability side in terms of providing them with liquidity, especially to tier 2, tier 3 NBFCs and banks, or for that matter on the asset side, whether it's in form of moratorium or tweaking with the prudential norms. I think irrespective, it is still not probably enough as compared to what the industry wants, and a lot on what is the extent of this problem. Sanjay talked about it, and personally I feel that irrespective of the optimism that we would of all of us want to have personally, as well as from our respective organization perspective, the reality is that this is not going to go away in a jiffy. Because the key factor, as far as I'm concerned, say from a financer's perspective, is that the fear has to recede. It is not the impact. We talked about the impact in terms of whether you take it as a fatality ratio or anything else is still comparable to a lot of other things. It is a fear factor which is significantly higher, primarily because of the infection rate. And I think this fear factor will have a huge game to play as far as the financing part is concerned. Obviously, everything is dead right now. Bulk of the financiers are having existential issues because it's a liability side issue for most of them in terms of raising money. And even top NBFCs and banks are having issues. When I say banks, I mean more of the smaller private sector banks, which are having issues in terms of raising money for taking care of basic obligations. I don't see this going away, the financing woes, at least for next 1 or 2 months. A point on interest rates, because I can see Satish now, so it's a standard and logical point about if the money is available at a lower rate, why is the banking and financing industry not passing on that rate, or not giving at a lower rate? Logically, yes, that's the way it should be, provided there is enough money available. There is just not enough money available to most of the players, which is why that drop in rate is not getting translated into the entire ecosystem. So that's about it. I think as has been the general view, the play from a financer's perspective is that in the short term, that is next 2 to 3 months, it is important to just focus on completing existing projects, see that whatever last mile financing is there, wherever you can scrap whatever money possible, you should put in to your respective financiers. Most of the financiers I know are also focusing on existing projects to try and see that additional lines can be given in that regard. As far as the government initiatives are concerned, if I deep dive into a wish list kind of a situation, I think some kind of a sovereign guarantee backed additional lending, especially for SME sector, that is definitely on the cards, and hopefully we'll see the light of day very soon. That's one. I think from a real estate perspective, a comprehensive one-time restructuring and not a 1-year rescheduling of project tenor, that is going to be the single biggest non-capital based initiative that the government can do, because it will automatically allow every lender to restructure their payments to different developers and make life simpler on both sides. Third, there has to be a more exhaustive way of giving liquidity to the second grade NBFCs and HFCs. What the good thing is that the government has said that what you've done last Friday is just a beginning, and they will be open to doing more. And if at all that more is required, that probably more is required today. That's broadly it. I think these three things, if done well, can cover a lot of things. On the demand side of it, because this is all supply side, on the demand side of it, from a financing perspective, there is obviously the entire thing of reduction in rate of interest for home loans, or for that matter, increasing the tax incentive, or some kind of a guarantee that can be given for completion. We are working with the government to try and work out a fairly innovative thing on some kind of a guarantee that can be given for completion of any particular project. So yeah, that's broadly it as far as I'm concerned from the financing part of it.
Thank you, Vipul. Now, since we have Mr. Magar, Michael, and Sangeeta, may I have their perspective on the real estate developers scenario right now?
Hi, can you see me and hear me?
Yes, yes, we can see you and hear you well.
Second time lucky. Good afternoon, ladies and okay, Chitra and gentlemen. So, you know, we were talking about economic crisis. I will take a few words from my friend Vipul and say, the fear of the unknown makes people think of existential crisis. That is what is happening today amidst many of us when we are seeing what is going to happen. Is the third May lockdown the terminal one, or is something else going to happen? The 20th April day event, many of us were hopeful of starting something somewhere, but the results obviously, because I'm empathizing with the district magistrates and thinking they are looking at, they're reviewing and saying what is the cost of giving people commencement of operations, because that is not just related to economics but also to the society and the existence. I just thought I'll add that in perspective, because I heard Sanjay speak about it also, that the thing is people are talking about the W curve. It's, you know, we were talking about UNV, now the word W has come in, because I think a lot of research has shown things are going to come back. It's not going to go anytime soon. So with the vaccine and the drug repurposing, all that going on in parallel, it is going to be uncertain times for a long time to come. So what do we as marketers, as developers do? So instead of looking out and looking at this, can we look at inside? And what I mean by inside is what is happening to our existing customers? Where are they? Are we keeping engaged with them technologically, virtually, understanding who are those customers who are paying and not paying? In the morning we were having a meeting. Understand who are the people who will continue to pay? Do they need any support, or are there cancellations going to come in? I'm talking from micro and then I'll go to macro. So that's the existing customers, as well as how do I prepare myself, because this is not going to be short term, that I can connect with my customers and book sales, give them experience, give them comfort and confidence. So preparing ourselves for the uncertain future is one thing which we are doing. The second thing is managing by cash, because economics and good economics comes later, existence comes first. So where is our cash situation? Is a Vipul giving me lines of financing? Are the banks giving me lines of, have I got that safeguarded? So that's the second point. So first is customer, second is cash, and the third most important point is collaboration with people like you. Because when we go to the government, it is not one, but a group of us who are going and talking to them. And I see confidence from Mr. Dr. Satikanta Das when he also made a speech, look like it is work in progress and they will be coming back soon. And so these are the three things which are very important for us as a developer: the demand side, and then from the supply side, I see employees. How are we keeping them engaged, encouraged, and empowered to do things which can be better for future? Either preparing, as you know, the online sales format, the online relationship format, training and development, and the last but not the least, I'm very worried about while we have workers in our sites who we are supposed to and we willingly and with lot of humility give them wage and recreation and food, the fate of that constituency is also something which we need to deliberate on as we move forward in this conversation.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank you, Sangeeta.
Nimish.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Thanks a lot for a great perspective over here. Mr. Magar, since you are now actually at a very important situation of understanding the pain of from a small developer to a very large developer, we heard Sanjay's views. We heard Sangeeta's approach and suggesting that there could be a W curve. What do you think is the situation with the spectrum of real estate developer from very small players to large corporate organized players?
See, after 3 years of what we say is a bad patch, we have come to the bottom, I think, which has no more depth left in that. It's come to the worst. Our situation is such, Sangeeta just spoke. When you go to the government, they are looking at survival. They're in the survival mode. So they say healthcare is more important. We want lives to live. We'll look at you afterwards. Now they're talking of revival mode where we are nowhere in the picture. The labor just vanished one day. Whichever is left back is becoming such a big problem. I can tell you that you have to feed them, you have to pay them, and then they want to go home. So they make a call on the helpline of their state. They say we want to come, we have no food here. So that helpline call goes to PMO, from PMO to CMO, to the district magistrate, to your site. And then they say, we don't want to be here. The banks, I think they are playing the safest. With all the things coming up, they still don't want to look at anything because they don't want to take a loss. I think this is time when everyone has to take a haircut and not only the developers. The retailers will say, we'll not pay you rent because we are not doing business. The IT will say, the servers are working, but our people are not coming, so we'll not pay you rent. The government says, we'll not give you money. The workers don't want to work. The customers don't want to pay. What the hell do we want to do? It's a very difficult situation. In fact, we are in, I think, the worst situation which anyone could be in as of now, and we are really facing a tough time, and more tough times in the next 6-9 months is what I think I see over the horizon.
Well, that's really bad, sir. We hope that by the end of this, there are challenges which can be converted into opportunity by the collective knowledge of each one of them, and possibly RICS playing a role in trying to influence something with the government. We would love to do that. While we are looking at it from the construction perspective, I still can't see Ameya join us. So Ameya is possibly struggling, but we have Mr. Dixit over here, President of Shapurji. Mr. Dixit, can I request your perspective on the construction and contracting approach? Do you think that there are going to be more challenges to the construction business? Obviously, there are lot of challenges already, but do you see a situation of contractual litigatory environment being just getting enhanced in the country?
We are integral part of the entire ecosystem of construction and real estate and financing and everything. So I think if real estate is going through a lot of pains, and also if finances are not available, obviously construction industry is going to be hit. And as Sanjay has mentioned in the beginning talk, that we have not seen good revival in last 6-7 years post 2008. We were fortunate to some degree compared to the Western world that we kept on doing something better than the rest of the world on the construction part of the story of it. But what we have seen in last 4 or 5 years is real estate and the commercial space has really shrunk. And because of that, in any case, construction industry was facing a lot of issues in last 2-3 years. Meanwhile, there was little breather coming from the government initiatives, from government launching a lot of projects in the government sectors. Be that is infrastructures or metros or new airports constructions, healthcare, also AIMS, IITs, and a lot of other initiatives which have been taken. So it's somewhat the people who were playing a lot of in real estate arena or also in the commercial space got little breathing from the lot of government projects coming in. And unfortunately, last 2 years, what we are seeing is that wherever there was some good pockets in real estates and commercial, especially real estate from Delhi, almost dead for last 2 years. Bombay, same case. Commercial in some way, Bangalore, Chennai, Hyderabad were showing a lot of promises in last 2-3 years. We saw in last 1.5 year Bangalore reviving, Hyderabad reviving in commercial, and Bangalore also in commercial and real estate. Bombay has still not done well. Delhi has still not done well. Industrial sector unfortunately has not done well anywhere. So we were, as a construction company or a contracting fraternity, were going through a lot of pains, cash-wise, funding-wise, as well as project opportunities across. Now, as Mr. Magar said, that probably we are at the bottom of the pit now, and that's the fact, because there are many projects which are halfway through, and we will be really wondering how we will revive them, because as somebody mentioned that we should be sharing the pains, but how do we really share the pains in terms of funding or in terms of revival of the project or the progress of the project, because there are so many external ingredients which are going to play the role in revival of this. So either that is like RICS, or through CFI we have presented ourselves or our case to Prime Minister's office and RBI. Builders Association, we have again presented our case to Prime Minister's office, Finance office. We have also through CIA tried to put some inputs to the government as a construction fraternity. But at the same time, I think the whole thing has to tie up together. And when I say tie up together, that is the finances plus real estate growth, government initiating and pumping in the money for launching the project and giving a lot of comfort on the fund and finances part of it, and also probably sentiments from the point of view of the people who are going to invest in the development of the projects. So at the moment, sentiments are playing very, very low. And as Mr. Magar mentioned, somebody is thinking, and many of the clients who I have discussed with, they have a feeling that it is very good, Mr. Dixit, that you have been able to hold some of the laborers in your labor camps. That the moment the clampdown is over, I think we will be able to start the work immediately. But as the human sentiment goes, everybody is yearning to go and meet their dear ones. They want to be with their families. So I won't be surprised if when the transportation opens up and when the train services and the bus services open up, you will see almost all contracting people who have been sitting at site vanishing.
Right.
The problem will further get compounded because this is the time of the year, and every one of us who is sitting here understands this. That this is the time of the year when monsoons are setting in. You have an agricultural period coming in within a month, and also it is a time when a lot of marriages take place. So marriages would be probably a little low key in terms of fanfare, but obviously I think the ceremonies are definitely going to be there. So in any case, every year these 2 months, May, June, are very difficult time for construction industries. And on top of that, when the construction workers vanish, I think it will be very difficult to move them back into the job. So this is one part. If we are sitting that yes, the moment the lockdown is lifted, we will be all able to bounce back very fast. I wonder it is going to happen. I suspect it will take at least 4 to 6 months to come back to normalcy. That also provided construction industry is very stretched at the moment. That's also provided when some sort of funds are infused into the system. And also we should be able to talk to our downstream supply chain who also cooperate with us. So it's a whole lot of thing coming from either real estate or the financing institutes or the construction company and the entire supply chain management, which is going to be working together to achieve or somehow revive the whole process. I think this is the scenario I foresee at the moment. How it
Right.
works out later after 6 months, we'll have to wait and watch. But as Sanjay and Mr. Maxine also mentioned, that I think the pain is going to continue for at least 2 years, and 2 years is like comfort statement.
Yeah.
So this is how it is.
Yeah, looks like we have possibly provided a platform to share the pain across the sector over here. But in that case, may I actually come to the consulting practices? You employ a lot of people, Anshul and Ramesh. So between two of you, can I actually request you to basically give a lowdown on what is the impact on the sector, especially with respect to the consulting practices in the country from the IPC perspective? Ramesh, you are muted.
Okay, so should I go
Anshul, go
first then? All right, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So look, I mean, obviously there's a lot of bad news for this year, and I don't need to reiterate that. I think let's focus a little bit beyond this year. I think whichever forecast that you look at, and first I think stop believing any forecasts to everyone who's listening into this webinar. Because they're all based on the situation today, and the situation tomorrow actually changes, from what it is today. If you look at the economic forecast from whether you believe, I don't believe them, but generally the IMF is saying, 1 point. The IMF is actually saying 2% growth for India roughly. The sorry, my thumb. Okay. The IMF is saying 2% growth. Oxford Economics is saying -2% growth. Whichever way, I think if you look at the economy, I think if we, the currency has depreciated by about maybe 8 or 9%. The situation today compared to 2008-9 was the commercial offices are not that oversupplied. In fact, it's probably undersupplied in most markets, which is very different from what it was in 2008 or 9. I think the companies across the world will have no option but to continue to look at avenues to save costs. And if India becomes more cost competitive because of A, currency depreciation, B, perhaps a little bit of leveling of rentals, and C, the overall cost of labor may actually come down with this, at least for the next 1 or 2 years. I would argue that India will probably become more cost competitive from a commercial real estate perspective, which should drive commercial demand back into India, or kind of restart the commercial demand, which will obviously disappear this year. But we need to give people time. I mean, this year is going to be a washout year. There's no doubt about that. But I'm pretty confident that should there be no a second wave or third wave through rest of this year, I think we should start seeing things coming back, possibly last quarter or early in the next year. Now, if second wave, third wave happens, then all bets are off. But why speculate on that? It's something that we don't know. Most of the the growth numbers for coronavirus that we are seeing, it seems that most of the countries have about a 90-day cycle, with 50, 60 days going to the peak, and then starting to, come down. And most of the cities have also gone through the same cycle, whether you've gone for the herd immunity or whether you've gone for a close down. We had a webinar on China, reopening China yesterday. There's a Kushman Vehicle webinar. You can see it on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn page, where our Chinese, the head of research in China, actually spoke about experiences in China. It was exactly the same, about a 90-day pain period, and then economy reopening slowly. Of course, the sort of retail malls kind of just beginning to, limp back into work. Offices starting with staggered approach, so 25%, 50%, and then slowly increasing. The last of the offices which was closed, which was Wuhan commercial real estate market, actually reopened last week. So, of course, there is sort of lots of negativity around, but I think if you look at China, there is a positive element of about a 90-day complete lockdown, and then the commercial activity beginning to reappear. So as consultants, we're obviously from a commercial reality perspective following the market, giving advice to our commercial tenants, clients, as to how do they deal with the situation, both at a portfolio level and at a design level. I think lots of that is going to change. The portfolio strategies are going to change. The design strategies are going to change. And I'll add just one last thing. There's lots being said in media around how work from home could kill commercial real estate. I'm happy to be on the record saying it'll absolutely not. What will happen is the companies are going to give more flexibility to their employees. We've seen TCS making that announcement and so on and so forth. So I think about 25-30% of the employees may, and I use the word may very strongly, may go and work from home. But it will be counterbalanced by the fact that you will probably need more social distancing in office, at least in the near term. And therefore, the days of 50-60 square foot per person may actually disappear, and you may have to go back to 100 square foot per person, all the time still having your real estate footprint very similar. So not increasing your cost, reduction on US dollar based costs. Your payroll costs are likely to temper for a couple of years, making India more competitive. Now, this is all future. I don't know when that future will come. I think next year, if we don't have a second wave, third wave, but not speculating on that, this year is going to be madness. Ramesh.
Thank you, Anshul. I think that leads me to the point which Ramesh has also been talking about, de-densification. So, Ramesh, if I actually can have your reflections on the state over here and some of the points which Anshul made. I have seen your webinar also, wherein quite a bit of it is reflected by you as well. So, but trying to understand it from you right now directly. So that would be great if you can actually reflect upon what is the current status at your end. And what do you see?
Sure. I'll just ask Sanjay one question about TCS's comment yesterday. Sanjay, what do you feel? Sanjay, you're on mute.
I believe organizations of such size and scale that are confronted with global economy overall going down. So TCS, a lot of us believe it's an Indian organization. It's the world's third largest after Accenture IBM IT company. Market cap of 150, which may be now 100, I guess. They have to take some drastic steps because they have a better view of global markets, and they're engaging with customers very much like CBRE, JLL, Cushman engaging with customers on day-to-day basis with global customers. So you would have pulse of the market.
2
lakh to 3 lakh people would have switched to IT, work from home almost at a drop of a hat. And these companies, and I'm not necessarily speaking about TCS, I'm saying most IT companies have designed their world through disaster management, through seismic zone, through remote access, artificial intelligence built in, etc., etc. So they have far more robust tech platform to manage business remotely, and they've been doing so. But I remember 7 to 10 years ago, Salesforce.com in LA moving from suburbs to downtown because they wanted, from the earlier concept of giving flexible, they wanted employees to come, network. It made a difference to the teams. So there will always be debate on one side, on the other side. But I believe I'm more alluded towards what Anshul was saying. You see, overall, the demand has been coming down. The has been going up. I remember 3 years ago, I was part of a board of a listed REIT where it was concluded that artificial intelligence is going to take away 50% of the office demand. You should stop investing. You should look at commercial real estate all over again. And exactly 3 years later, from 35 million, it became 47 million square feet. It has nothing to do of a client. It has to do of the sector. I believe cost pressures will make organization outsource more. I'm looking at how can I outsource more. So business models are shifting. The dollar advantage will help India. Forget about costs, just the scale of business and expertise, the managerial talent that we have in India will give an edge to India to begin with. And even if a substantial piece of this becomes remote, just the way you and I know that 20 to 30% of the workforce of many outsourcing companies are anyway working from home. They don't have workstations. As the economy grows, as a global economy grows, as new entrants who are in India are going to expand, the India story will continue to grow. And TCS may be doing the right thing to be more asset light and have a healthy balance of using real estate. And some of these firms, by the way, many of these IT companies, I think, are more bigger than developers in the country. They don't need too much real estate anyway. So I think it makes sense for companies like that to take proactive measures to be more competitive, and especially TCS, because they're in the outsourcing business and technology business. They need to be competitive.
Thanks, thanks, Sanjay. Do you think that they were also kind of just trying to show all the global clients that everything is fine, we are productive, 90% employees are fine? You think it is also playing a messaging to their clients that
you think it is optics? No. So I believe you know, a listed entity and globally and the largest you know, part of Tata as a group, and the ethos and the governance, the management style of Tata as a group, the whole transparency, they generally mean what they say, whether it is to do with the, you know, efforts towards fighting and helping government to take over COVID. I think they meant it.
okay. Because I last week some of those clients of ours were quite negative about work from home. After seeing the TCS statement, suddenly started asking us more questions, saying, okay, can we move 25% and stuff like that. So yesterday suddenly the things seem to change.
Ramesh, all these things will coexist. Co-working will continue to increase even if some companies went bust, because it just makes sense to have some flexibility in your business. I think you will see both of the worlds, but I think India overall in terms of office absorption will remain robust. It may have a short-term setback, which happens at all times. You know, companies stop hiring, they stop making capex. There is a freeze until the mandate from the board comes down that you can actually open up again. And I think they have to do that for next 6 to 12 months.
Interesting. So, Demish, from our point of view, it's not been easy last few weeks. Last time the downturn happened, I was not at a leadership role. So first time I'm facing something so drastic. So all kinds of discussions on people cuts, salary cuts, all that. So not been easy. Just 5 weeks back, we were all celebrating because we had a really good 2019 record year, 18% growth, all that. But suddenly things have changed so much in the last 5 weeks. I'm sure we'll learn and be better prepared for handling such situations in the future. What are we trying to do? First 2-3 weeks has been trying to get people to be productive, which is very important because work from home, especially in our industry, which is so much of client contact industry, people could be working, but are they really being productive, generating revenues and profitability for the firm? That's a tough question. So the first few weeks have been focusing on increasing their productivity. How do people stay engaged with clients? How do you connect with clients more? How do you bring in that urgency? All that. Other than that, from a business point of view, we are monitoring a lot more. 4 months is already gone. Fifth month will also go very soon. So how do we kind of work hard to kind of catch up on these 4-5 months? The good thing is typically in our industry, because the year end is Jan to December, typically the first quarter is light anyways, and the brokers don't leave anything much to the first quarter, so they do everything in December and finish it off. So that is one way to feel a little better that thank God COVID happened in the first quarter. But otherwise, stricter controls, stricter monitoring, frequent communication with people, telling them, being very open, good news, bad news, just being open to them at least, but showing people you care for them. So we did a few things to kind of show people we care. Where the senior management kind of took a hit, but took care of the other people, but don't know how long that'll kind of last. It's all. Sometimes I feel I'm the only one optimistic, and when I meet clients, when I meet developers, when I meet funds, when I meet my global colleagues, everyone says this is a write-off year, washout year, all that. It's kind of scary. So the other day, I heard this guy speak at a webinar. Yashwant Sinha's son, who's a minister. What's his name?
Jansen.
Jayant Sinha. He was talking about. He said, in your career of 10 years, 1 or 2 years will go off in black swan events. So be ready for it. So I just keep telling that every day to me that this is that 1 or 2 years which is going to get messed up in that 10 years. So balance it. You should try and make it work. So.
Sanjay, you were about to say something.
I'm very tempted to say very quickly without taking too much time. So if I was in Ramesh Nair's position today, I would start by saying in consulting, generally it means during pain you gain. Second, I would say, they have a substantial business of annuity income. So almost 55 to 60% of the IPC industry now has annuity, which means they can put their legs up and the money is coming in. The balance 40%, there also 25% of the transactional business is almost certain. They have to fight for only 20%. That's why the brokers towards the end in December, they make it good. So it's all right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sanjay,
absolutely.
I don't think it's as easy as that, though. Maybe in your days it was. Life has changed significantly.
I think the lessons for all of us would be, look at the fixed cost and the distribution of the cost between fixed and variable. I think the question that you and we all should think about is, how do we transfer the load to variable and success, then be high on fixed?
I think it was so easy for Sanjay that he left and joined Tata's.
Okay. Coming back to, so thanks a lot for this. And I am actually conscious of the fact that we have a lady from Sri Lanka. Professor Chitra, what's the situation in Sri Lanka right now?
Okay, Sri Lanka we have 323 COVID patients and we have a 21.2 population, but we are generally okay. We are generally okay, but as everyone says, I am from the construction industry, so the construction industry is really down. But government of Sri Lanka is now looking at saying, okay, COVID-19 is destructive. What are the positives and what are the ways what are the strengths and things like that we can work on. So government is now promoting quite a lot of online teaching and education, so that half will be done face to face and half will be done on online, so that we can reduce the cost. And government of Sri Lanka is also done for the construction sector at the moment by CEDA, which is the Construction Industry Development Board, COVID-19 document for contractors and consultants and the employers. What they are saying is at the moment we are in discussion as to who has to pay for this extra safety precautions that the sites are going to have. So we are saying that it should be shared 50-50 between the employer and the contractor, but that is not decided yet. And also government has now promoted that they have said that they are hoping to start, but we were hoping to start this Monday, but we have another 20 odd cases today. So we will be hoping to start by next Monday. But again, 20 people starting, most of them working from online, you know, so but still it's very, very doubtful how we are going to go forward. We are totally locked down and we can't get out. Only the vendors might come and give us, we can buy food. So that's the construction industry per se. As for consultants are really down the drain because we just haven't got clients to pay us, and we just managed to pay our salaries for March, but we are not sure what the possibility will be for all the consultants in paying their salaries in April. Government has given a short, like a loan at 4% interest. So those are some of the positives that have come out of this, but nothing sort of concrete yet. But one thing that is more so concrete is that we may have our elections on the 28th of June. So we are hoping that by that time we will be sort of better. So
Well, all
yeah.
the best for that, Professor Chitra. We hope that this basically remains at the level which you are in right now. So I'll get to a very interesting question over here. Has COVID really compounded the challenge? I'm actually getting a lot of questions from the participants also, which I'll come to later on, but we'll try to make sure that we make the most of our time which is available with us. Has COVID really compounded the challenge we had with respect to stress projects, AIF, funds to NHB, reduction in repo rate? Do you believe these measures are enough to bring much needed liquidity in the market? Is there more that needs to be done? And how can the government entice businesses from regions such as Americas, Europe, Australia, and Far East Asia, like Japan, to consider India as the most viable region? So maybe I can get Vipul over here to try and reflect upon that in a moment. And if Michael has joined, if he can actually also please speak on this topic, please. Vipul, can I get you in, please?
Yes. Can you see me?
Yeah.
So I touched upon that. So apart from these, I think what will be primarily required is demand side initiatives. Whether it, because ultimately let's assume a decent case scenario where we are 1 to 2 quarters down, and in 2 quarters or 3 quarters we are looking at a revival. Ultimately, let's face it, buying a house is not an emergency item for anybody. Buying a house is something I will buy only when I have relative surety on my ability to take a loan, and which in turn is a function of my job and so on and so forth. I personally, I kind of share what Ramesh mentioned. I am pretty optimistic. May not be on pure, very low income housing, but this mid income housing has to go up, because people who are fence sitters, who are basically working on the thing of that interest yields are 1 or 2% in residential, prices are not going up, they will all start taking decisions. And one direct impact of what we are seeing is that everybody needs their own space. So to that extent, that will be a positive headwind as far as residential is concerned. On the demand, so to that extent, demand side initiatives such as uh, uh, insurance that I will get my house on the particular thing, because obviously the bankruptcies and the problem on the supply side will go up. That has to come, because there has to be very out of the box thinking. So that will come up in some way. That can be an additional thing from the government, which is some kind of a sovereign guarantee of completion as far as different projects are concerned, which can be structured through the insurance route. That's one. A second very important thing I mentioned earlier is that what we are doing about the NHB and all is, or for that matter, direct lines pushing, prodding banks to give money to smaller NBFC, that is just not enough. There has to be a direct line, whether it is in form of choosing what needs to be done, so and so forth, or giving money, because ultimately the banking system just does not have the distribution network to cater to the tier 2 and tier 3 developers. They don't have a distribution network to go and give home loans to. The whole reason we have the entire shadow banking system is because the distribution network of banks is not enough, and that realization has to come in the government. Third, very important, there has to be some kind of a large scale buyout, not distressed, but just buyout of liquidity or buyout of assets to provide liquidity to different lenders. So if I today have a LRD portfolio, which can be high end, and I'm an NBFC, the problem is so grave that they don't have options to even sell a good LRD portfolio. Forget raising money on my balance sheet. And I'm talking for an average NBFC, and that kind of liquidity can be done, as I said, both on the supply side of money in terms of liability, but also in terms of creating a AIF or a master NBFC which just buys out assets at cost or lower from other NBFCs. These are generally being done everywhere. They in different formats. Obviously, we have our constraints, but these are three things that probably I would say most important from financing perspective.
Thank you, Vipul. Mike, since I now have the focus on you, can I actually have your reflection on to the question which I had asked? Is there a possibility of government trying to do something more in enticing more businesses over here, or what is that we need to do to try and make sure that we become an attractive investment option for these countries who might be looking at hedging their business risk from what they initially had as China being the manufacturing center of the world?
Yeah, you can hear me. I'm not on mute.
Yep.
So I think, I mean, clearly we need to continue the good work around ease of doing business and trying to make India a location that works for private sector companies, global companies. So there's been good work on that. I think the commercial office sector is a great example of how Indian business, Indian talent competes at a global level. So Sanjay was talking about TCS earlier on, but there are, I think there's now 1,500 global capability centers for international companies here in India. That hasn't changed in the last 2 months. That India is a place that is a global leader for the technology center. For technology is the center for the world. I think when I look back on, Ramesh sounded pretty pessimistic about the scenario. I think Anshul and his comments about the time that it might take to recover is probably links back. I remember the time from the GFC back in 2008. This is a very different circumstance, and frankly, in some respects, much better than where we were at when we went into the GFC. You know, we had a wave of supply coming through. That's not the case now in the commercial office segment. You know, we're in a good place in terms of vacancy. The supply side clearly will get more constrained over the next, well, already is, and over the next year for the reasons that we've spoken about. So I don't see supply being the problem that it was in the mid to late 2008 to 2011 period. The question that I think none of us yet know is how we can look forward to demand. One thing's for sure is that it's going to take some time. Somebody mentioned earlier on that there'll be a pause while international companies figure out what to do. Anshul alluded to the fact that the cost competitiveness has improved with the rupee coming down, but there'll certainly be a pause. Like in 2008-9, that pause lasted for the best part of a year. But at the end of that year, many companies internationally realized that India was able to provide a great cost competitive solution. And actually, I think since 2009-10, so that's a decade ago, India has moved up the value chain and proven that it operates with the best global talent. So it's not primarily about cost why the best companies are here. The best companies are here in India because they can get the talent available at scale, and that hasn't changed. So I'm positive and optimistic that the core technology sector, which is the strength of the commercial market, there'll be de-densification. There'll be which I think is a good thing to bring office densities up to better, more humane type of levels. There'll probably be more work from home, but I think net the technology sector, at least, which is supporting an ever increasing complex world, will continue to be attracted to be based in India.
Thanks, Mike. I'll come to Mr. Magar also and possibly have Anshuman also reflect on that question. With the supply chain definitely been disrupted significantly, do you think there are measures which the government should take to ensure the interest of the MSMEs, who are an important player in the entire real estate and construction scenario? Mr. Magar, can I begin with you, please?
Yes, I think they need to be helped. In fact, we had a call with about more than 120 manufacturers across the country recently, and they all had the same issue. So, but the government is doing for the MSME. I mean, not for the real estate, but for the MSME, yes. They are doing a lot of things which will need to come. Just to take a clue on what has happened previously, what discussions are happening about office space and about residential space. One thing has come out of COVID-19 is that the safest place to go back is your home. So we are extremely optimistic now. What type of home, what size, what price, only time to come will decide. But we personally feel with all the CRIDA members we have been talking to that this is going to happen in a good way for the industry in days to come. But it will take time, 6 months, 9 months, but at least there's some silver lining on the dark cloud. Second discussion which was continuously going on was about office space. Fortunately, unfortunately, I have my hands full to the neck deep in both office space and managing residential areas. And we have seen, first 2 months there was a panic, but now people that working from home concept is not been liked by the employees, because we manage townships, so we know we have connect with the employees, and also the mid-level, the managerial people who actually operations people who are here, because that environment is not being created. They are not being very efficient, and they all want to come back to their space and work. Yes, social distancing will come in. The space, what we have shrunk when Mike was there, it was 125 square feet. And when Ramesh has come, it has come down to 55 square feet. So I hope it
right.
But yes, the MSMEs, a lot of packages are coming. The government is looking very positively at it. And but we have to give it time. We really don't know what's happening tomorrow. What Anshul said is very correct. There's a bright future, but when it will come is what we have to sit and see.
Thank you, sir. Anshuman, your take on MSME, while the government is, as Mr. Magar said, there could be packages coming in. But do you think industry has to do something and the large players have to do something in supporting MSME? Otherwise, they possibly will be looking at cannibalizing businesses within their own supply chain.
Yeah, I think first of all, urgently the government needs to, like all the other countries are doing is to give all the tax benefits one should give, because if the government can't, everybody expects the government to give handouts, which maybe our government may not afford to give too many handouts, but the least they can do it, be it VAT, GST, whatever taxes, whatever they can do to ease those, or at least give them loans, whatever financial, not give a grant, but some kind of a easing there on taxes and some loans. The other thing is on opening, you talk about supply chain. I've been on some discussions, webinars like this with the government. So they are slowly planning to open up, factories, allowing transportation, trying to ease up movement in ports, airports. It is very difficult because the fact is whichever country is opened up, the infection rate has gone up. So I think government is in a very tough position. The key is that the government to really give, especially any other fiscal incentives to them and allowing them to work. A lot of other the other countries, which again I'm not sure how much we can afford, are giving wage subsidies. So one end, what is not right is that government is talking about not to let people go, pay them, in these times you should retain them. But the fact is, for a lot of SMEs and MSMEs, there's no revenue. How long can they pay? And if the government is not giving wage subsidies, then they don't have the right to really talk about, keeping people. I can understand in places like Singapore or even UK, and in the US, where the government is actually subsidizing, giving cash handouts, they can still, and they have made it a condition that you can't let people go. In Indian government, has actually should not do that and will not be able to anyways implement that. From the industry point of view, I don't know. Everybody is right now, it's trouble times, but whoever has whatever, even support the industry, people who have to make payments, so they should do it. But these are tough times, and everybody's in it. But government does need to accelerate, distributing whatever help they can give, and on the tax thing, because here every day counts, and we can't wait for another 1 month for government to take action. So I'm hoping the discussions, like Mr. Magar mentioned, there are a lot of discussions happening. Now we have to wait and see how quickly can the government implement.
Right. So if I can get Addy in also, Aditya, sorry, sir, Mr. Dixit, you were saying something. Sir, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I think how we should look at the entire scenario is construction industry employs about 5-6 crore people, and I think they are all from the lower strata of society.
Right.
And if you look at the entire construction industry supply chain, maybe there are 20 crore people, whether it is MSME or lower strata of workers or laborers or subcontractors or subs, etc. So there are about 20 crore people who are really dependent on the construction industry. And when I say construction industry, it's the entire whole chain of the construction business, whether it's a real estate or whether it is all the way up to MSME. So one of the requests one should make to government is, when RBI is trying to give impetus to the government with release of money, there should be some dedicated funds by RBI which should be given and marked only for construction purpose. Right, like 3 lakhs crore, 4 lakhs crore, something like that, for giving relief to the construction. Because I'm very sure unless construction gets revived, there are so many industries which are associated with it will not get any help. Because even if you try to help some MSME for manufacturing, but if there is no consumption happening with new projects coming up and a lot of growth happening, those products have no meaning. Production has no meaning. The guy has to return earn also. So I think there has to be a specific complete package given by government dedicated to construction industry.
Right, sir. So if I can come to Adi, I mean, while we are looking at fund flow in the country by various mechanisms which government is trying to do you think there is a bandwidth for international players or sovereign funds and other players to come into an exciting place like National Infrastructure Pipeline (NIP), which is talking about 102 lakh crores to be invested in infrastructure sector?
Tough question. Um, so investing for us, I think if you look at most sovereign investors and most large investors, I think there's a twofold part to this. Part one has been managing our existing portfolios, and which is, I think, what most LPs have been focused on for the past 45 days. And I started out at China, and then it spread across. But it's basically cash management, trying to defer as much unnecessary expenses as possible, realizing that OPEX is not as variable as we all thought it was. So we spent the better part of 45 or 60 odd days trying to manage existing portfolios. And then the other part of investing is trying to, I guess, position ourselves to profit from future developments. The problem is we don't know what the future will be at all. We have few, if any, facts around the future, and almost everything that our theories are is extrapolation from past. So you have all of this, and then you have some other fact patterns that are playing around in other parts of the world. If I have $100 or 100 rupees to invest, the reality is public markets have fallen far more than private markets. It's the same in India. It's also the same in the US and Europe and Japan and Australia and other markets. Other reality is also the rupee has fallen a lot more as an emerging market currency than we thought it would. So dollar is king, whether good or bad, we just have to accept. That's how there's a flight for dollars. And then the third part is in many developed markets, leverage is available at very cheap rates. Not just construction financing, but just acquisition financing as well. So if you're a foreign player, maybe for the short term, the opportunities might just be better, A, in developed markets, and B, in the public space. Because private markets, the mark to market hasn't happened yet. There's still a lag. And what we can all say with some amount of certainty is what was 100 rupees 2 months ago is no longer worth 100 today. It is 95, 90, 70, 60, take your pick. But in the private market, that hasn't happened. And the conversation we're having today, this webinar, is mostly around the private market. It's around illiquids. And that mark to market hasn't taken place yet. So until that mark to market doesn't happen, the opportunity of deploying in unlisted private assets versus listed public assets, there's a difference, there's a gap. And I think it's not that easy to manage the gap in today's world. The second part also is, I spend 100, I use 100 of my equity, and I can probably get up to $300 because I get debt really, really cheap. That liquidity is not going away globally at 2.5%, 3.5%. Suddenly, an opportunity that was theoretically a 5% or a 6% return just gives me net to my bank account a lot more money because advantage of leverage, just as an acquisition financier. So we've got to take that into account, and the net output, to your question, may just be, well, maybe not right now, even though it is the need of the hour of this country. Maybe not right now, and maybe until the dust settles, we don't know. Because I think there are opportunities available to all of us, including yourselves, to deploy in what may be more distressed, for lack of a better word, pricing. So yes and no, maybe 6 months out or a year out, it's different. I do want to add, Anshul mentioned to this though, and it's not related to your question. We all need some optimism to look up to. So, in February and in the beginning of March, we spent the better part of our working lives at Arya focusing on rent abatements because our China portfolio was going through a shutdown. We have retail assets there. Glad to note our retail assets are up and running, and I want to run out some stats for you. Our opening hours are now 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. These are in Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, Xi'an, and Guangzhou. 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. opening hours. Footfalls are going up to, I'm going to say, about 76% of what they were last year. Footfalls.
Right.
Footfalls are up anywhere from 48% to 76%. Chongqing seems to be doing really well. Our trading rates are going up by about 14% every week. So the biggest part for us, the downside was in Feb, we saw this coming in China. We weren't able to adapt to it fast enough for the rest of our global portfolio. But we're seeing the uptake in China, and we're trying our best and scrambling to try and see what we can learn from the China uptake and see whether it applies when India or Singapore or Australia or other markets open up. But there is hope. Just we have to have some sort of optimism built into us, otherwise you'll always be pessimistic.
Well said, Aditya. I think that's possibly the need of the hour. While we are talking about optimism, I do want to basically reflect upon the question which has been received by one of the attendees also, and a very important question which has been put over here, which might be to Sanjay and Mr. Dixit. And if Ameya, I'm not sure if I'm able to get you in, but if you can, please allow yourself to come in. But in terms of this labor crisis, which is a significantly challenging situation for all of us to try and make sure that the real estate and construction industry is resurrected, do you think that there is a permanent solution, a lasting solution to migrant labor challenge? Mr. Dixit would also be requested to come in. But if I may begin with Sanjay first, please.
Nimish, like I was saying earlier, there are a lot of pressures on how real estate viable, and to reduce the construction cycle has been one of the major focus areas for most. And while government has come out with all the reforms, but the only area where they have not reformed is themselves, which is the approval environment to OC, and at every stage they have to involve for some reason. So obviously, a lot of pressure of market, of capital cost, lack of demand or disruption on demand side has led to a lot of pressure. So we've been focusing on precast and 3D precast, and the capacity in the country is actually increasing as we speak. And also the architects who are not designing the products which is precast friendly or which can help contractors execute fast, and that awareness was not there. And the third element was the cost benefit analysis of a conventional construction and the precast. Why? Thanks to minimum wages going up in last 3 to 4 years, again very recently announced by the UP government, just a knee-jerk reaction to increase the minimum wages has made the rationale for precast even more relevant. So the question we're asking is that while we need jobs and there will always be enough jobs in construction workers, how can we reduce dependence on migrant workforce by going for precast and steel structures? So I think events like this will actually help accelerate that.
Wow. Mr. Dixit, your take on that, please.
Yeah, the productivity is the major issue, and I think everybody thinks that more number of the labor on the side is going to help do the work faster. That's not the fact. Very recently, what we have seen, and many of us who are involved in the construction industry know it, that few years back, structural steel composite structure buildings were kind of looked at cost, not cost effective from the point of view of it typically costs you 15% more than a RCC frame structure. But today, in Shapurji, we are doing about 70 million square feet of structural steel composite structure buildings. So though there is a cost little more than the conventional RCC, but I think every client and developer and the end user has seen the importance of saving time. So if you are able to save 4 or 5 months time by doing a composite structural steel building, and if you can put it to use faster, have faster rentals, save on the interest on your finances on the project, and start earning from that, I think that balancing, as Sanjay mentioned, that cost analysis has to be done. And I'm seeing increasingly people are gravitating towards that. So that is point number one. Point number two is 3D precast And that will be very, very important when we are doing affordable housing sector, where you have about say 300 square feet or 400 square feet of housing unit. The entire unit can be 3D precast on the ground, including finishes and toilets and everything plonked. It's like logo structures. And some of the government contracts very recently, which we have backed, large one, especially in Bombay, we are exploring the possibility of using this technology. And there are other players also in the market who are trying to use that. That will help immensely to faster work. So if you are trying to do, say, 50 towers of 35-story buildings in 20 months' time, I think there's a feasibility of doing that. And dependency on migrant labor will reduce. Also, what we need to keep in mind is, because of all this COVID and the financial scenario, a lot of welfare schemes are going to come up in local state bodies, where they will get employment locally. And you will increasingly find that the migrant laborers are very reluctant to leave their hometowns and travel all the way from the east to west of India. So you are going to see the dip in migrant labor coming for your jobs in any which way. So I think it is very important that we start looking at doing some kind of debate and understanding where architects have to come into this, because somebody in last webinar a few days back mentioned that architect is an artist and he can fancy things whatever way he wants to make, and construction, structural designer can do design today because of the IT platforms available to do any kind of design and so on and so forth. But I think he is not trying to balance between constructability, time saving, cost, and a good looking building which is functionally wonderful. I think all these elements have to come together to reach at a solution. Sanjay, you were saying something.
I very quickly wanted to make a point that, when you use the workforce at the construction site, the way they do business even today, almost manual, it's just shocking. I think we have to see a remarkable skilled workforce at site with mechanized systems available to them. So we have less doing more work than thousands of people at labor camps doing small work over a long period of time. So if the construction cycle in NCR is now 8 months, because 4 months go in ban during pollution situation in Delhi, you ask these questions, why can't we address this? So I think this is the next level that we need to see.
I think you are very right, because can I continue?
Sir, may I interject, because I think we are getting very close to the end of it.
Maybe
I'll just
make one quick point.
Yeah, sure, sir.
I think we need to reduce the dependency on doing jobs on site. And one of the easiest solution which I find today is trying to create dry walls inside the 4 walls of the building.
Right.
Today, we are even not able to graduate to that level that we want to do dry walls. Now, there are certain question marks around that, but I think there are a lot of solutions available. So as much as you can reduce the dependency on doing work on site, I think what Sanjay is asking.
Absolutely, sir. I think that's a very vast topic then actually to discuss upon, and we'll possibly try and convene another platform. But one couple of last questions. Anshul, if I can get you and Rameshan for trying to reflect upon, and maybe Anshuman can add in also, trying to reflect upon the FM industry, the importance of FM as a profession, and their integration with the construction industry. So if we can take 1 or 2 last questions on this, and then we'll come to a close. I am conscious of the fact that we have already shot the time limits of the webinar. So 1 or 2 last questions, and then we are done with this.
Well, I mean, clearly from an FM perspective, automation, I think will get accelerated. FM has traditionally been seen as, just very basic service providers so far. And I think the technology integration into FM going forward is going to be very strong. And when I say technology integration is probably a lot more contactless, touchless technology, which will obviously help prevent any future infections and so on and so forth. And I think just the value addition coming from this industry in terms of just upending, not only from perspective of public health or but also security and catering and so on and so forth. I do think that if I look at China, what they're doing, a lot of it is around right now as a first reaction contactless technology, and of course improvement in building HVAC systems and so on and so forth, which is the immediate sort of safety measures for the government. But perhaps Ramesh will have a bigger view on this.
Unfortunately, I can't see Ramesh, but if I can get Anshuman's view to it. Anshuman, is there a bigger role which FM needs to play, not just in the real estate and corporate real estate space, but in construction space also? Because I do believe there is an entry point of FM into construction space straight away. Anshuman, you are muted, please. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Okay. Sorry. No, totally agree. I think FM will only, the role will only expand. I must tell you, last couple of days, I've been calls, group calls, otherwise talking about coming back to work. So what should be the strategy? Because after COVID-19, things have changed. So all our FM teams are working on re-entry back into office, retail, just people coming back to work, what all needs to be done. Which I don't want to go into detail, but from distancing and checking and how the whole thing, cleaning, engineering side, automation. So there's a huge role, including construction industry you mentioned. I think that is one of the businesses which I would say, of course, it will slow down to a bit, but would be least impacted, and is only expected to grow as more and more people, because right now a lot of times, even in construction sites or offices, retail, still the whole FM industry is not fully come of age. I think COVID-19 will accelerate that. And you would see more and more, the FM, the whole process system, like Anshul said, automation, new other things they're going to do, but more organization will adopt it. So it's going to see growth in the shorter term, not even the long term.
One last question, which is a very important one. Is there a time to actually look at kind of a new model of real estate, which is beyond sale and purchase, which is where I would possibly have Sangeeta and Vipul reflect on it. Sangeeta from the perspective of a real estate developer, Vipul from the perspective of an investor. Would you like to invest in areas which are from a long-term annuity perspective rather than a direct sale purchase?
Nimish, before I get into this conversation, I just wanted to bring one element of real estate which we could not discuss, and that's an opportunity area, and I was meaning to come into it, is the industrial real estate. I'm happy to inform all of you, in the month of March, which is a COVID month in India, that's when it all started getting aggravated. We actually had a country coming in and signing an MOU with us for a country cluster in one of our locations. So I would like to just bring in this aspect here, that industrial real estate, thanks to what's happening around the world, and you would be reading a lot of it, has an opportunity in this country, and this is the right time, because we missed it last time round. Vietnam, Myanmar, and Thailand kind of picked us to the post. And the impact is not only on domestic demand, on the back of domestic demand, but also exports. SEZ has been a much neglected forum in this country. So countries are looking at India. So this is also something which we are bringing back to the government. Now, as far as real estate forms and fashion are concerned, I heard some of my colleagues talking earlier of, the good thing is life is not binary. We always jump to a conclusion ye hoga nahi to wo hoga. It is never like that. So there will be, someone said about de-densification in commercial, there will be designing spaces. Real estate homes will, residential real estate will see design changes. We'll see transaction, and where a Vipul and a Sangeeta coming from to structure a product for the customer, which is not simply sale purchase, which helps them to finance lightly, but also have virtual ownership of that physical space. So that's one element. How do I structure a product which becomes a financial product yet a consumption product? Ultimately, residential real estate will become more and more a consumption product rather than an investment, but it is structured like that. The second is in the co-working space also. I think, as someone spoke about outsourcing earlier, there will be co-working spaces, but of a different form and fashion. So I see in this business model, design and innovation and technology playing an important part in structuring such products. And that's where the developers like us have to step back and step in.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Vipul, you take please. And there is an associated question which has come from an audience also. Will you be actively looking at investment in pre-leased assets, equity investment, or structural mezzanine debt for commercial developments going forward?
Answer to both the things is yes. Anything which has annuity, yes. Answer is yes. Obviously, if it makes sense from a risk-adjusted basis. And will we look at investments? Yes, we will look at investments.
Thanks a lot, Vipul. I think that's the ray of hope. That's the optimism which everyone was looking at. So when you and Andy are joining hands to try and get some more money into the system, I think real estate developers have now they'll have to look up at newer models, as Sangeeta suggested. Sangeeta, to be honest with you, there were a few questions which came from the participants also, which was around redesigning the real estate spaces, residential spaces, which are around COVID. So I think great. I'm extremely sorry that we have seriously overshot the time limits. But given the kind of leaders I had, there was no way I could have let gone of you without you giving your snippets for this industry to look up to. And I'm glad that each one of you have actually taken the challenges in stride and actually have started looking up, identifying what are the areas we can actually try and work upon to ensure that we come out of these challenges from an opportunistic growth, rather than trying to basically get swarmed by the challenges and stare at a endless tunnel. There are opportunities which this market faces, whether it is FM, whether these are near real estate model, new financing model, or simply an approach to collaborate amongst various industry, trying to redefine how the migrant labor should be looked at or how the construction industry should behave. I think there are quite a few areas of action for the industry. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for your generous time which you had given. And I sincerely apologize for this delay, but it was important for all of us to get there and for me to try and understand what is that as an RICS we can take up and start reflecting on to the industry or to the government also in terms of our advocacy business. Thanks a lot once again. Thanks a lot, one and all who was there. And thanks a lot, attendees. We did have some questions from you. I'll try and endeavor that we take up those questions and get the leaders to answer those questions on one-on-one basis. We'll possibly try and come up with an objective assessment of this, maybe a white paper which can help the industry going forward. Thank you.
Bye.